And in today's spotlight with me is Chairman of the Confederation of Regional Business Chamber, Vivek Charran, just to talk about, are the safe zones working for the private sector, or do they need the quasi-safe zones that the government is proposing for the public sector? Good morning to you, Mr. Charran.
Good morning. Very happy to be on with you this morning.
Thank you so much for being here with us. So just talk to us. Is the private sector looking to move from safe zone to quasi-safe zones?
Well, just getting into it quickly, a safe zone was where everyone had to be vaccinated within the space. A quasi-safe zone, we believe, would be an evolution of the safe zone in which mainly only the people who are operating the business, employees and so on, members of the board, everybody has to be vaccinated, have the choice to be vaccinated, whereas the customers and people who are coming into the business do not have to be vaccinated. Now, the issue was many of the businesses were saying, as we are reopening the economy and so on, we want to access all our customers because, we want our business to grow. It's about business survivability. It's about business sustainability. And it also means that we no longer want to say, well, we're keeping half our staff at home or 25% of our staff at home. We want to ramp up our production capabilities to the maximum and move forward into 2022. So one of the issues was, how do we do that? Because we have a situation here where we believe that we have a duty, in a sense, to manage the risk associated with our employees, particularly when it comes to being infected with the COVID virus. And I'm saying that because over the time period, many, many businesses have seen infections take place in the workplace. And unfortunately, and sadly enough, many businesses have also seen the death of employees and so on because of the COVID, getting COVID infections and so on, and sadly passing away.
Let me see if I understand you, Mr. Charran. So it's that the infection rates haven't necessarily changed, but the economic activity is limited because there are safe zones.
No, actually, the infection rate, as we know, as we can see, with Omicron and so on, it's increasing. Can you say that the infection rate really is getting less?
No. I'm talking about in the safe zones in terms of people who are vaccinated. Since we're dealing with safe zones, I'm asking if even in the safe zones with those everyone vaccinated, if we've seen an increase or decrease in the infection rates, or if it's just the same as if people weren't vaccinated.
What I can possibly speak to is that we are seeing less people, being hospitalized and dying. We also feel within the business sector, even though we're not doctors, but this is from experience, that people who have come down with the virus, because remember, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, you can still get the virus. Yes, there's the efficacy rate, which may be 70% or so on, where there are some people who are exposed to the virus will never get it. However, what we're looking at here is, we believe that people who have been exposed to the virus and have become infected and are vaccinated, they tend to recover quicker than people who have not. There's also the situation where in large organizations, where we're talking about more than 50 employees, more than 100 employees, we're seeing that the rates of transmissions can be high. The question is, at what point do you have a responsibility to, let's say, manage the risk associated with COVID? Do we wait until the hospital stays? Do we wait until people get sick and say, well, that's your problem, you at home? Or are we able to manage the risk associated with COVID within the workplace, particularly when it comes to employees and so on? The difference between customers coming into a business is that a customer will come into a business, maybe they'll spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maximum half an hour, maybe longer if it's a particular type of shopping they're going to do. However, with employees and workers, you're coming into the same business 8 hours a day, sometimes longer, 5 or 7 days a week, right? Some people even work 7 days a week right now because everybody's saying, listen, you know what? I need to make as much income as I can get to keep the bills off my back and so on.
So let me ask again, is it that the safe zones aren't sufficient for generating, more economic activity?
No, the safe zones are working as they are. The quasi-safe zone is an evolution in a sense of the safe zone. What we're asking for in quasi-safe zone
but why?
is simply asking
why do
for
you
the
need that?
ability of
Why
a
do you need that
particular
change? Why do you need that
we
change
need
from
that
safe to
change
quasi-safe zone?
because we're not 100% happy with the fact that customers have to be vaccinated to come into the safe zone. One. Two is that the quasi-safe zone really is a measured response to the fact that we want to protect the employees, the people who are working in the environment from the worst effects of
All right, Mr. Charran, your video seemed to be sticking there for a bit. Are you back with us?
Right. Right. Yes, I am. Sorry about that. So what's happening in the quasi-safe zone is a choice made by the business in very specific circumstances to them that they want to be in a situation where they believe it is best if all their employees are vaccinated.
Right, but I'm still not sure I'm following you, because with the safe zone, all your employees are vaccinated. With the quasi-safe zone, as far as I'm aware, is that all your employees will still have to be vaccinated, but those who are patronizing can be vaccinated or unvaccinated. So isn't there a higher risk or a greater risk to the employees, having to mix with people who are unvaccinated in a quasi-safe zone?
Well, the two things, right? Remember that there's screening for customers when they come in. So before you even enter the establishment, there's temperature screening and so on, sanitization and what have you. Everyone is supposed to wear a mask and a face shield when they're in the business as well too. And in many businesses, you have the situation where there's even that plexiglass shield between customers and the employees. So in a sense, it's safe. What about in manufacturing, in manufacturing plants or in service industries and so on, where you don't even face a customer or you don't face as many customers during the day? What about situations like that? So you're talking about the services sector and all, to where people may be giving up, dealing with financial services. You may be dealing with administrative sections within a large organization where, like say, accounting sections and so on, where you don't face customers. You're talking about, manufacturing and so on, where people are on the plant or on assembly line and so on, and they don't face customers as well too. What's the situation? I was talking to someone who has, a particular type of factory, and he was telling me he has over 100 workers, and the how many people are staying home and how many people are getting ill is continuing to happen, and he's worried about the levels of vaccination within his workplace, because he said yes, he's seen an instance where two employees have passed away due to COVID, and that is not something that he wants to deal with. From a different perspective as well, right? It is about businesses working together with employees. This is not businesses against employees. Everybody has the idea that we're saying mandatory when it comes to the quasi-safe zone. Mandatory is something like it is mandatory you get a license in order to drive. This is not, it's a choice. Everybody has a choice. You have a choice to be vaccinated. You have a choice not to be vaccinated. You have a choice to come to work in a business where people are saying they need to be vaccinated, as it is in a safe zone, or you have a choice to not come to work in a place like this because you believe you don't want to be vaccinated. So there are choices and choices. If you're saying the choice can't be taken away from one side, then it shouldn't be taken away from the other side either. But the reality here is we need to get our death toll down, and we need to reduce the level of hospitalizations. And at one point that start, it has to start also in the workplace, where people are sitting behind a desk or working for 8 hours a day, well, 9 hours a day plus, lunch hour and so on.
So in other words, Mr. Charran, is it that the reason for wanting to move from safe zones to quasi-safe zones is so that if employees choose not to be vaccinated, they can be furloughed? I mean, once the legislation is passed, that is.
No, first of all, let's correct the misconception about moving from a safe zone to a quasi-safe zone. They're two different things. The safe zone is already enshrined in law And it is specific to things like bars and restaurants and entertainment and so on. We'll also see that in the upcoming carnival concerts and stuff we're having, that is being designated safe zone, so that is enshrined in law. The quasi-safe zone is not yet enshrined in law. And you're talking about employees being furlonged and stuff like that. But you have to understand that there's a human element in this as well too, and also a business element in this. The human element is, how do you look at, if you think to yourself that you've taken the best precautions you have had against COVID, and you have taken the risk as well to say, well, I'm taking the vaccine. How do you watch employees get sick? How do you watch employees say, well, I have to go to the hospital? How do you deal with the fact that someone who's been working for you for 10 years or something, you get a call and saying they passed away? And where did that happen? Suppose that happened in a sense, within transmissions and stuff like that. Nobody can really say if it happened in your business, if it happened out, who gave it to you. There's also a lot of conflict sometimes happening within a business when infections happen. Who gave it to me? Was it that girl? Was it this guy? The blame game starts, right? You came in with a sniffle. You came in with a cough.
Do you think that the Safe Zone initiative that we have now, that those kind of businesses would want to stay as such if we have the rest of the private sector in quasi-safe zones?
No, I don't think they'd want to stay as safe zones. And that's the truth. And I believe that, you see, again, we need to evolve through the pandemic. And the impetus for the evolution, or the catalyst for the evolution, was supposed to be the more people that get vaccinated, the more the evolution can take place back to a sense of normalcy, or that normalization can happen over a period of time. Because the vaccination effort has been stalling, and we're somewhere between 600 and something people vaccinated and 700 and something people are not vaccinated, then you find that the entire evolution out of this pandemic and the entire normalization process that should be occurring in 2022 is stalling a bit. And therefore, that's why we have things like the quasi-safe zone and so on. Yes, you are quite right. People, if the quasi-safe zones come into effect, then obviously people who are under the ambit of the safe zone will say, well, I would prefer to move towards a quasi-safe zone rather than stay as a safe zone. But again, there are the health matters that I cannot speak to, not being from the Ministry of Health or not being a doctor myself, and the people who make the decisions based on that level.
But what would be the benefit of moving? What would be the benefit of moving from a safe zone to a quasi-safe zone, though? Because at the end of the day, all the people in your workplace are vaccinated, so the risks are much less, as far as I'm aware, in terms of even contraction and transmission of the virus.
Well, again, remember I spoke about the amount of time. You see, congregation is key to transmission. And that is what we're also trying to manage in the workplace, the level of congregation. What is congregation in terms of how close you are to somebody, or how far away you can be, or even with social distances? But one of the medical arguments used in things like bars and restaurants and so on was that these are areas of congregation, or these are areas of high congregation, particularly bars and so on. So that the mixing of individuals with regard to vaccinated and unvaccinated could lead to a higher rate of transmission and so on. And therefore, not only would you see a larger spike, but also perhaps you would see a larger level of hospitalizations and perhaps deaths coming out of that spike over.
So then, shouldn't we all be trying to get to safe zones as compared to quasi-safe zones then, based on the logics and the argument?
Well, if we do that, then how do we? You're saying that if a business says that they want to, they want the right to be able to say, I want my employees vaccinated, and they believe for the right reason. How do we then say that with 700 people out there, we all need to be safe zones, when that could possibly mean that the 700 and something people can't access certain goods and services or a certain type of lifestyle? So furlonged on one side and furlonged on the other side in a particular way. But the key thing here is not about being furlonged in the first place. The key thing here is, in order to move forward, we need to get down that death rate, and we need to get down the rate of hospitalizations. And if we can do that, right, if we can do that, then that level of normalcy will begin to be apparent within the economy. I'm seeing all the kickback towards Carnival. And I understand where that's coming from, particularly as Fed promoters and that entire industry, which is huge, right? Because the people within the Carnival industry, they're almost working for the entire off season just to start for the on season. But we haven't had an on season for 2 years now. I understand that, but then what are the consequences? What are the consequences when we have 700,000 people who are unvaccinated? What are the consequences to them? What are the consequences to those numbers as if it is that we open the floodgates and everything happens? Again, it's a matter of congregation and so on, and how that's going to affect particular numbers and with regard to hospitalizations and death rates. We wish in business. Everyone wishes that we can get away from those numbers.
Mr. Charran, I'm out of time, but maybe we have to pay more attention then to the enforcement of the public health regulations, because those are going to ensure that we don't have the gatherings. Those are going to ensure that we maintain our distance, wear a mask, wash our hands, and sanitize.
But then how do we live with COVID and how do we move forward? Because you see, if it is that we say that we are unwilling to forge ahead, we are unwilling to cross the obstacles, we are unwilling to educate people or to get past the fear and the misapprehensions and so on. When is this going to end? Are we going to live with safe zones for the next 5 to 6 years? Are we going to have our children out of school for the next 5 to 6 years? Are we going to have safe zones and nobody's going to be able to visit a bar or a restaurant if you're not vaccinated for the next 5 to 6 years? Are we not going to have carnival fêtes for the next 5 to 6 years?
All right.
At what point in time are we going to have this level of normalization start to creep back into our daily lives?
All right, Mr. Charran, we do have to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing with us. And hopefully, with the legislation, the private sector will be able to, get the ears of the government and see what best can be worked out going forward.
Thank you, Natalee. Thank you for having me on.
You're most welcome, Vivek Charran, the chairman of the Confederation of Regional Business Chamber. But we have to toss to a quick break. Stay with us. Much more coming up in the program.